Welcome. Glad you're here. I'm Jen Lepore, Marketing Team Coordinator at Custom Processing Services. And today, Charlie Casale, our Senior Business Development Manager, and I will be talking a little bit about blending. So Charlie, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, Jen.
So to give our audience some context, let's start with a brief general definition of blending and its main purpose.
Blending in general is, taking two things or more and sort of mixing them together. Blending tends to be about dry processing. So you might take 2 or 3 or 4 powders. When you get into liquid on liquid or liquid and gas and some other things, that tends to be more of mixing, but the terms are often used quite interchangeably. But for us, as a toll processor, blending tends to be dry. And you also want to blend with as little energy as possible, whereas mixing tends to use a lot more energy. Think about, if you're mixing two things together and you're trying to get them dispersed, it takes a lot more energy than if you just tumble blending a couple powders together.
Okay, so you said that blending can be used for either dry or liquid ingredients in this industry.
Correct.
Okay, so what type of industries use blending?
Well, really, the list is quite lengthy. So the chemical industry, the medical industry, food and beverage, paint. Like an example, blending paint is when you go to the paint store and they don't have the color you want, they'll take 2 colors and blend them together to give you the color you're looking for. But cosmetics, fragrance, pharmaceutical, it's really quite a long list of industries.
All right, so you mentioned food and pharma. So let's get a little bit more specific into the food and pharma applications. Why is blending so important in food and pharma?
Well, because in those applications specifically, the end use requirements are more stringent. So if you're not blending to 100% homogenous, if you're not mixing to 100% homogenous, then you'll see problems in the let's say the final product that'll be detrimental.
So obviously with food and pharma, FDA regulations. So what would you say, how do the FDA regulations about safety and consistency impact the blending process?
Our food and pharma plant is FDA registered and inspected, and the FDA is a government agency that is in charge of protecting the public for things that companies make, right? And but really the quality system that we use to run the plant, generally across all our plants, we're an ISO 9001 company, but specifically to our food and pharma plant, we're an FSSC 22000 company, and that stands for the Food Safety System Certification. So that's our quality system that documents our procedures, our cleaning validations, our process validations, and every way we interact with a customer's product from when we receive it to when we receive the raw materials until we make their product and ship their final goods.
Okay, so, with that being said, we have a lot of protocols that we use. So what type of protocols would you say toll processors follow to prevent the cross-contamination that could potentially happen?
Sure. So specifically, those protocols are around our cleaning validations. So we have detailed cleaning instructions because, unlike, let's say, a manufacturer who makes the same thing all the time and the equipment only ever has one product on it, we're constantly processing, in this case, blending different things in our blender. So we have very stringent protocols, systems, procedures, checks, and then verifications for when we clean to make sure it's 100% clean. There's no residual material from the previous campaign before we go into the next product.
So how would you say toll processors handle differences in particle size and moisture and flow properties to comply with the end user's product?
Well, that's a big question. So when we talk to a prospect, the first thing you have to do is to discover what they're trying to make, right? And all those things that you talked about, particle size, bulk densities, how it flows, are they all dry ingredients or some dry, some wet? We take all that data and then our technical team reviews and decides, because we have more than one kind of blender, hey, this is the best blender for this product, and or that might be a better blender for that product. And ultimately what we do, we establish a contract with the customer. It's our first quality document. It's our quality document number one. It's our processing specification that details all those things that the customer requirements. So then when we finish making their product, it is in in accordance with as they expect.
What other challenges might arise in food and pharma applications that toll processors may need to be aware of and prepared to solve?
Well, most of the requirements for blending will revolve around cleanliness, around the homogenous of the final blend. There can be bulk, and it'll revolve around the customer's, let's say, specification, because different customers will specify different things. So some might have a bulk density specification, and sometimes the dry ingredients, if you're doing dry blending, don't want to mix. So maybe you use a more aggressive blending technology versus a less aggressive, a gentler blending technology. That could be a ribbon blender versus a cone blender. But that's all part of that discovery when you're talking to a new customer. What's important to them, what's paramount to them in their specifications. They might have 10, but like 2 or 3 might be very firm and hey, these have to be, and the other ones might be secondary.
So, you brought up blenders, and that kind of is going into the next topic of equipment. So, what type of blenders might a toll processor use for ingredient blending?
Well, there's a lot of blending technologies out there. Most toll processors, I believe, will choose, if they have more than one blender, or even if they only have one, will choose a blender or blenders that meet, a wide variety of applications. So double ribbon blenders are very popular. Cone blenders, yes, there's slant cone, V cone, double cone. There's a bunch of different cone blending technologies. And here at CPS, we have both double ribbon blenders, and we have a few of them, and also cone blenders. But then you get into more mixing, and this again is the overlap between, let's say, blending and mixing. There's high speed mixers, there's high shear mixers, there's homogenizers, there's 3D mixers. So if you're getting into wet and dry blending, maybe one of those pieces of equipment will be more applicable than a double ribbon or a cone blender.
Wow, so there's a lot. So, would you say blenders are considered standard or specialized equipment for toll processors?
What I would say is that the equipment tends to be fairly standard, but what's not standard is the vendor you're working with. So do they have multiple technologies, so multiple different blenders that they can choose from, so they can choose one that's more applicable to the application versus if you only have one, then there's, you might put the square peg in the round hole that way. But also, what's their quality system like? How much experience do they have? What kind of expertise do they have? That's really what makes not just blending, but toll processors more specialized. It isn't just the equipment. It's the sum of everything they bring to the table outside of the equipment.
Yeah, excellent point. So, would you say blending equipment is the same for dry and liquid blending?
No, typically no. Although there are some that certainly overlap, but we tend to use the cone blenders as dry. That tends to be a dry blending technology. Mostly the double ribbon blenders are dry, except sometimes we do spray on a dry substrate. But when you get into liquid mixing, that's probably, and there I said it without even realizing it. When you get into liquid blending, I tend to think of that as mixing, and then you go to a different technology that's more efficient and gives you better results. So, and again, having a vendor that has all those capabilities allows them to offer the best solution.
Okay, so would you say a toll processor typically has all those blender types on their line, or not the case?
I think it varies. I think some of your bigger toll processors will obviously have more more tools in their toolbox. But some toll processors probably only have one kind of blender. So I think it just varies vendor to vendor.
So, what type of factors determine the type of blender used for processing and why?
Um, well, things we've already talked about, like how many ingredients are they all dry? Are they all this? What's the particle size? How do they flow? What's their bulk densities? What's the end use specification? And sometimes they want to maybe get a little attrition when they blend, and then you'll choose a more aggressive blender, let's say like a double ribbon blender. Sometimes the materials are very fragile. They're already there's already something coated on the substrate, and they don't want to break that. So you'll choose a more gentle way to blend. So it's really about talking to your potential customer, and again, finding out what's important in the process, and then designing a process to achieve their goal.
Okay. So, that kind of takes me into my next question. How important is it for toll processors' ability to run trials, especially in something like this?
In my opinion, in my experience, it's very important. So trials do one of two or three things. So one, like we call about like feasibility, like can you make this product to our specification? And that could be a pound or 10 pounds or 100 pounds or whatever amount. But it's often they have uh, um, a set amount that they need to validate what we're doing. So first part is feasibility. Can we do it? Second part is like, okay, then I give you some product, or we make you some product that you test, that then proves out the work that we did does meet your objectives, may hopefully exceed your objectives. And then the third part of a trial can then be the commercial scale up. Because we learn a lot when we produce something, even on a small scale, that we can then apply to not just make your product, but the most efficient way to make your product, which ultimately translates into the lowest cost to the customer.
So that explains a little bit about the trials, and a lot of new customers obviously do the trials with us. So that's going into my next question. When vetting for toll processors for food and pharma blending, what type of experience and capabilities should be a priority?
If I was out looking for a toll processor, the things I would look for would be first, the facilities. Do they have the equipment and maybe multiple kinds of equipment to potentially make my product? Do they have the experience and the expertise, the technical expertise to overcome challenges that tend to pop up during trials? And then, the facility itself, are they ISO 9001, which is a general quality system? Do they have a food and pharma system? Again, here at CPS, we're FSSC 22000. Our plant is also FDA registered and inspected. So do they have those sort of things? We also are kosher, halal, PA organic. So all those certifications speak to our experience and our expertise. Do they do audits? Are they willing for you to come on site and see their plant? Because if you're getting some no's on some of these questions, to me, those are the red flags that they're trying to hide something. We're here at CPS. We're very open. We're proud of our facility. Our customers are impressed when they come and see it, and we like to show it off.
So my last question, how would food and pharma manufacturers get in touch with CPS?
Well, I think we'll pop up on any number of Google searches for blending or food and pharma processing. Our marketing team does a great job. But our website is probably the most common way to get a hold of us, and that is customprocessingservices.com. The main line here at the plant is 610-779-7001. But if you want to call me direct, my direct line is 610-401-0765.
So thank you for stopping by, Charlie, and thanks to you for all watching this month's Custom Processing Services Toll Manufacturer Minute. Be sure to subscribe to our blog and to get the latest episodes of our show, plus news and insights from our team of experts, and we'll catch you next time. Go. Go ahead, Charlie. You can do something fun.